Thanks so much for being here. So let's get started with the webinar today. We're going to talk about the hidden costs. We'll actually be talking about all the costs in intelligent automation and how we can understand those costs and reduce the cost that we incur in intelligent automation, especially the total cost of ownership. So let's get right into it. We have Ahmed today. Ahmed is the CEO of Accelirate. Ahmed has been in this automation field for quite a number of years, and he has been at the forefront of bringing better, automation development and support to the community. So he's been part of our community. Bot Nirvana, he's not in part of the community, but he has been a guest on our community and has been sharing great insights. So so today we are doing this joint webinar with Accelerate. Thank you for being here, Ahmed, today. We look forward to that discussion today with you. All right, we have a simple agenda for today. We are going to talk about what the TCO for intelligent automation solutions are. We'll have a discussion in terms of what the strategies to reduce the total cost of ownership or the cost in your intelligent automation, and we'll have a Q&A and final thoughts. All right, so we'll start with a quick intro and then get into the discussion. From an intelligent automation perspective, the total cost, knowing the total cost is important, right? I mean, because just like any program, if the costs exceed and you get bankrupt, the program fails. So understanding that is pretty important, right? So, there are multiple costs. There's direct costs and indirect costs. Like we know, there's a development cost, there's a support cost, and a lot of other costs which we'll discuss today. But why should we know about them? Because one of the things is that many of us start the program quickly. It's an impulse buy. Let's do a POC. Let's get started. But as we move along the program, we realize that there is much more than the cost that is that we initially consider, right? So we want to think long term. We want to have an accurate depiction of the cost so that there is no surprises. Like I said, you go bankrupt and there's a sudden surprise, right? So we want to avoid surprises. We want to understand what could be the saving opportunities, because each opportunity to save cost is important for us, because if there are so many costs which could go haywire. So at least if you can control many of the costs, then we are in better control. It also enables better decision making as we go in the program. It's like a small startup, so better decision in terms of where I can invest money, where I can save money, and finally, obviously, the higher probability of success. So that's why we want to know about the total costs involved in an intelligent automation program. And the key costs generally are three. And this is very self-explanatory. The upfront cost, which and whenever you're starting your development implementation, that's the initial cost. And these costs we always consider. But what we don't consider is the next two, usually. The ongoing cost, which is the cost to support the program. You've built your automations. Now, how will we support it? How will we keep going? Believe it or not, this is the biggest component, because you're building it in few months, but then you got to keep on supporting it for the lifetime of that bot, which may be multiple years, and usually is multiple years. So that's one big cost. And then the surprise cost, the unforeseen cost, the indirect cost that we usually don't consider, and which we're calling here as the hidden cost. So we need to consider those as well. And those are things we'll talk about today, especially the hidden cost, because the hidden cost can build up over a period of time. So you may not know it up front, but it keeps building, and suddenly then you realize that, oh my God, I've exceeded my budget. Now what do I do? You got to go to your finance and get a new approval and things like that. Or maybe it's gone way over, many times, especially, from the different costs that we'll talk about. So these are the costs we'll talk about today. This is 5 key costs, and our thinking has evolved as we went through this presentation, creating this presentation. So 5 costs we'll be talking about today is the infrastructure cost, the license cost, the operations cost, which is basically the governance cost, the development, testing cost, the support and maintenance cost. These are the 5 key components we're talking about. We're talking about the costs for the upfront cost, the ongoing cost, as well as the hidden cost. Okay, so this is where we get into the discussion with Ahmed, and we're going to talk about strategies to reduce the total cost of operations, or the costs involved, and how we can reduce the costs in the intelligent automation, in your intelligent automation program. So let's get started. Ahmed, you ready?
I am, my friend. Thank
All
you so much
right.
for having me on. Really appreciate it. It's an interesting conversation today.
Yeah, yeah. So let's dive in. Um, So the first cost, as I said, is infrastructure cost, and this is one of the things that hits us first as we start the intelligent automation journey. And the first thing I noticed is that getting the infrastructure is hard, especially if you're an on-prem. You go to an infrastructure engineering guy, and then he's like, okay, yeah, you got to wait like 6 months before you get your servers, and then as you dive deeper, you realize that, oh yeah, it's not just the servers. You got to set up a network, you got to set up a storage, you got to set up your security, you got to set up your compliance. So there are multiple things that start hitting you that, oh my god, okay, yeah, I didn't consider the compliance cost. So that's when we start realizing, oh my god, there is that cost. And then when you start looking at it, okay, this is just a starting cost. How about keeping this running? So there's maintaining this hardware and software, maintaining the network, maintaining all these things, right? The storage, security, everything. Then you got to be monitoring and reporting, and you got to be keeping on top of this one, because you also want to be thinking of, okay, what's coming up in the future. Do I need more servers? Because I realized that, and now I need 6 weeks. I need to be thinking ahead, right? And then, yeah, should I move to the cloud? How about the cloud? So adding additional capacity for scaling is when we realize, okay, probably cloud is a better option. But then when you get into the cloud, then there are some tricky cloud costs, so you should be considering that. You got to be on top of that, especially if you are on AWS, or if you've been there on the cloud, you realize that, oh my god, suddenly you get hit with a bill unless you're monitoring it closely. Your
Absolutely.
utilization. I'm sorry, Ahmed.
Absolutely. I think those are all things that all of us who've ever been through this through a program have experienced at one point or the other.
Yeah, and yeah, and also I was going to say, that hidden cost is the key part of it. Those tricky costs, you got to be looking at understanding, what happens if there's an unexpected breakdown or a security breach. Do I have some buffer costs? Can I take care of that? Have I taken care of the security upfront so that such breaches doesn't occur? There can be data loss. There can be, your downtime, so network downtime. So all those things, right? So from a perspective of infrastructure, you have a lot of costs out there which we should be considering as we dive into this program, and not go bankrupt, as I said earlier, right? So Ahmed, from your perspective, yeah, a lot of people talking of on-prem, right? Because from a security consideration, I can understand they want to be on-prem, and as I said, many of us want to go to the cloud. So what's the best approach here? What have you seen?
I think thanks, Nandan, for that setup on this, right? I think I'm seeing, obviously we've been talking about the cloud forever now, right? Everybody wants to say they're cloud first and cloud enabled and cloud native and all of that. All those buzzwords are around, but I think there's still quite a bit of investment on the on-prem infrastructure that people have set up, and that continues to be sort of, hey, we have all this infrastructure in house, why don't we use it, unless there's a big move to the cloud, right? Especially so intelligent automation, when we talk about it, right? So there's your traditional use of intelligence services from all the Microsoft, Amazons, and all of that, and then there's the RPA is a big portion of this, right? So what we've seen in RPA components, you got the server components and the virtual machines that actually run the agents, that component. And I think for the most part, what I have seen is that the more you can go on the cloud, the more you can easily reduce the upfront cost and go in a consumption model, right? I think what's really important how the world has changed, right? We don't, people in cities don't buy cars anymore, right? They figure they do Uber in a consumption model. This is basically using a car in a consumption model, right? So I think we're all look for a consumption model where we pay for things as we use them when we use them, right? So I think going cloud for at least for your server infrastructure is actually fairly a good idea, right? Because I think just looking at some of the, especially if you add the intelligent part to intelligent automation, some of the infrastructure required for machine learning and training and those things can be significant. I've seen number of servers, tens of 15, 20 servers between your three environments, dev, QA, prod, right? You can easily go into quite a few servers, and I think going cloud is probably one of the best ways to reduce, number one, your HA and DR costs, because a lot of the cloud providers are already enabled for that. From a security standpoint, I think most organizations today have figured out what their cloud strategy is, and what is allowed to be on the cloud, what is not allowed to be on the cloud. I think that from a hidden cost perspective, when you talk about security and data loss and things like that, there's in fact a lot of ways in intelligent automation to make sure that sensitive data is masked before it goes out to the cloud, and some of those risks can be mitigated. I think the way to save um, on these infrastructure costs, number one, go cloud if the org is cloud enabled, right? Use as much of it as possible. Again, use a managed service provider like us, right? Shameless plug. We do a lot of managed services, and mature organizations like us have it figured out, right? We already have enabled the models. We already have enabled the security and the monitoring and all of the nitty gritty of procuring and provisioning infrastructure have been figured out. So the managed service provider manages the environment for you. And a lot of times we do that on-prem as well. So we can manage the environment for you on-prem as well. So if you'd like to go a hybrid approach where some of your infrastructure is on-prem and some of it is in the cloud, that's also a big that's also a possibility to reduce some of those upfront costs. And again, planning the program is important, right? You have to make sure that you understand how big you want to take it, when you want to do it, so you can plan out your requests and upfront figure out what your needs are going to be going down 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. And the big thing, in fact, that a managed service provider provides you is they've automated a lot of this infrastructure management, right? We use ITSM tools. We use tools like Robotic and some of the other platforms to actually manage what's happening with machines. So if machines disappear or you have some issues on them, we have automated ways to recover and triage those issues. So I think that's also very important and a big value add from an infra perspective.
Yeah, good. And so, how about a hybrid strategy? Some of it on-prem, some of it cloud. Does that work?
I think a lot of folks prefer that, especially for the RPA side of the house, right, as opposed to the some of the other traditional just calling a service side of the house. If you're just calling a service, your data is not really stored somewhere else. You're just sending it out, getting the results back, and that works. For RPA, almost all of our customers have a hybrid approach where the server infrastructure resides in the cloud, but the agents always reside in on-prem.
On-prem. Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you for that. So let's talk about the next one, which is the licensing cost. And this I've heard from multiple people, right? Unused bots, which is with respect to RPA and unused bot. But it's, there's a lot of shelfware that we end up, especially in larger organizations, because we think it's a good idea, and it's just like in life, right? I buy a lot of books. I think it's a good idea to buy a lot of books, but then we don't read those books, right? And so same thing, somebody buys licenses, person loses interest with the company and leaves the company, and then that license is lying out there, or you just move to a different program. So a lot of shelfware lying out there, whether it's the platform licenses which you have to buy upfront. So a lot of add-on licenses also you get for an intelligent automation. You go to the UiPath license page, there is a whole list of licenses for you that you can purchase from, and whether it's an IDP that you want to take or a process mining that you want to take. So all those things, and then there may be some application licenses or user developer licenses, like UiPath again, the developer licenses, which is the studio licenses. So it's multiple licenses that you're going to deal with as we start the program, and then as we go through the program, there is that renewal of the program that goes in, and then there are some upgrades and newer versions coming in, and as you scale, obviously you want to add more licenses. So now let's look at the hidden cost for that one, right? So hidden cost usually is the shelfware, which we discussed earlier, right? There's a lot of shelfware, a ton of shelfware, and it's not just intelligent automation. Across the software spectrum, we see a lot of shelfware out there, and there are in fact also complex licensing programs which can get you into trouble. So those are things you need to be considering, especially from a hidden side. How do we stay away from all these things, Ahmed?
So I think again, where I'll go is, I think for the most part, let's talk about the I part of the IA, right? Intelligent automation.
Yeah.
Uh, the the Google, Microsoft, Amazon services that you may want to use, intelligent services of either, OCR or NLP or whatever other, intelligent services you want to use from these things are pretty much consumption based. So that's great, right? Pay for what you use. The RPA side of the world hasn't caught up to this, to be honest, right? I think that model is a broken model in the sense that, since the beginning of the industry, I think, it was decided that licenses would be sold on a per bot basis, and they will be sold in increments of years, right? And customers were forced on the beginning to say, how many do you need? Right. And I don't blame the software companies for it. Of course, they would want to sell as big a license deal as possible. Fine. But the customers kind of didn't really have too many options, right? Their option was, if you wanted to even start small, there were minimums at times, right? This is the minimum we'll sell. And then you're buying it for the year. I always likened this, there was always the parallels drawn between a human worker and a digital worker. It's like going to a customer and saying, I sell you temps, but I only sell them for a year.
And
Use
then I only sell 10 of them.
Yeah, exactly. And I only sell 10 of them. And by the way, you need temps, but you don't know what work they're going to do, what that SLA is going to be, how much of it is going to come in. But I want you to decide right now how many you want, right? So there was a lot of wild guesses, and there may be a very enthusiastic sort of mood at the time for the program, and that fizzled out, or different reason for the program not growing. At the end of the day, what we saw was that a lot of folks, and HFS has done reports on it, and everybody's talked about it, the shelfware problem. I think it stems from that model of, we will only sell, the unit of selling will be a robot, and what we will sell will be for the year. I think that has to change, and it is changing, right? So folks like us are providing now an MSP model where you are now able to add licenses, remove licenses as you go along, pay for them monthly as you need them, and take away the risk of having to make a guess of, what is your, what's your, how many licenses do I need, when do I need them, so on and so forth, right? So at the beginning of the program, you only really need 2 or 3 development licenses and maybe some DU licenses to be able to do some document processing platform, and maybe a few non-production robots. And then when you go live, the first time you go live, you need a few robots, and then after that you scale up from there. The problem always was, you had this huge investment up front, and any hiccup in the program really put a dent on your calculations, right? You had one hiccup, you found out one roadblock, and all of a sudden you can't go live with these 6 robots that you were planning on going live with, and now you have the shelfware sitting for another 3 months or so on and so forth, right? So I think that's a big problem that we're out to solve, right? We provide a flexible model to be able to, and we're not the only ones. There's a few others, but I think the licensing model, especially on the RPA side, has to change, and it has to go to a consumption based on an as needed basis, not a large outlay of capital. And I think the platform guys are also understanding this, and they're starting to price by the platform. But I think the risk of having to make a guess on your scale is a tricky thing to do, right? I mean, you have to make the business case, and then fine, you can make the initial business case, but any hiccups along the way really hinder your business case, and say you already spent the money up front buying the licenses, and now you have shelfware. So I think going to an MSP model, which is a bridge from you pay for what you use when you use it, scale at your pace, and take that risk away is really important. I like to talk about this case study that we recently had a customer. They were very gung-ho on the program. They just really wanted to start. They said, okay, can we start in 2 weeks? We started in 2 weeks. They said, how much licenses do I need to buy? I said, don't worry about that. We'll go through the thing. Right now, you need a few developer licenses, the platform license, and let's get moving. We put the first bots in production in 6 weeks, right? Turned on 4 bots. Put another automation in production in another 4 weeks. Turned on another 5 bots. And they were like, great, this is great. I'm now paying monthly. I can actually see what my outcome is. I can now go back to the business and say, by the way, I need another $500,000 for this program, because you can already see that I didn't have to do a large outlay of cash, and they've already doubled their investment in automation. I think that is the new way of being able to scale programs without these hidden utilization headaches, right? At the end of the day, it's a headache, right? It's until the time the unit of how you sell is a robot, you're gonna be in that conundrum.
Yeah, and I think MSPs like you are forming that bridge, like you said, between the newer models where it's like you go to the cloud, you go to any of these AI providers, and even like let's say ChatGPT with what they release APIs now, they're all you can pay as you go consume, whereas like when we started RPA, yeah, you got to take 10 of these, and then only then you can get started. And then we are like, oh, let me figure out what to do with the rest. I only have a plan for 2, but let me now figure out for the 8, and then come back and put together a plan. And then what happens is when we do the 2 or 3, there are so many problems which we are discussing like today, right? Like even employee resistance, change management, so all those problems. And then so many are left, and I've heard this from many companies who have like many bots lying, and one of the things they come and tell is, I have just 8 bot licenses, I don't know what to do, can you come help me find some opportunities so that we can get start using that. And then that's also something, a problem coming back to companies like UiPath is like people asking them, okay, where's the value, I'm not using these 5 things, so maybe
Yep.
I'm not going to renew all these things. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a great thing that you guys can form that bridge and give people that option in terms of just picking the bots or picking the licenses that they want, and whenever they don't want it, just release it back to the pool. All right, so
Absolutely.
yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely. I think that is the new model to go with, and anyone starting a program, I think that's the ideal way to start a program.
Yeah, true. So let's talk about the governance cost or operating cost. Setting up a program is not easy, and it's so many moving parts. Especially from all aspects, whether it's a people, process, or technology. There's three key aspects. There's many things that you need to take care of, right? Like one is bringing in the people. You're setting up a new organization, for example, a center of excellence that you're setting it up. I mean, maybe you're not setting up a center of excellence, but still you're bringing in new people, bringing in people to drive your program, to govern that, set up the processes, the framework for doing that. You're setting up the pipeline. That's very important. Initially, yes, we have fairly good ideas, that's low hanging fruit, but then as we progress, it becomes more difficult. So you need a program where you're managing the automation pipeline, you're planning for the audit and compliance, and then as you go along, there's this whole ongoing costs, right? So like ongoing governance, governance expenses, the review and updating of the framework, the ongoing compliance cost, and most importantly, the hidden cost, right? The hidden cost is when, let's say, there is a non-compliance. So you set up this governance framework, but it's shaky. Your compliance is not great. Suddenly you get hit with some compliance issues. It could be even legal issues that could affect the whole organization.
Mm.
And the bots can be tricky. They can do a lot of things, especially if you don't consider your security aspects, your challenges, you're basically what is that, segregation of duties. Yeah, that's a term I was looking for, segregation of duties. You need to consider everything, otherwise you could get into issues. Many times, yeah, you could get away with it, but most probably, unless you have a governance setup, you don't go further. Many people say if you even don't have a center of excellence, you don't go further, or center some group which is dedicated to making this program successful, right?
Yep.
And then yeah, and so from an operating procedures perspective, Ahmed, what have you seen? What's the right way to approach it?
Yeah, I think you can spend a lot of time, effort, and energy, a large investment firm, in the beginning stages of, especially, intelligent automation was taking off early, 2015 through 17. And we saw a lot of organizations set up these centers of excellence, right, to govern the program, right? And they spent a lot of time, effort, and energy into it. We had a large investment firm that spent almost $250,000 on it, right? Just setting up the governance infrastructure, and it paid off, right? It did pay off at the end, because they had audits that they had to go through. All the investments that they put into the automation program would have come to an halt if they didn't have this governance program in place, right? But large MSPs who have done this stuff at scale have already have the battle scars to say, you should do this, and this. And you should go to some of those folks and actually ask them, hey, listen, what do I need and how do you solve for it? A lot of these things already exist in the enterprise, and you just need to repurpose them. Some of these things are new. So you have to actually make sure that not only do you have the organizational guidelines and the structure in place, and the governance structure in place. Most times, and if your service provider is good, they might even come up with instrumentation in place that allows you to have the management of the various governance aspects of pipeline, demand intake, ongoing compliance reports, ongoing, some of the security things that you need to do in order to make sure that your program is secure, and so on and so forth. MSPs at scale have the instrumentation in place to allow for that management. So you can go to a service provider and actually make sure that they can take care of these technical and mechanical things that need to happen from a governance standpoint. So you can actually focus on looking at the adherence to this governance, rather than setting up the platforms and setting up the various procedures for this governance.
Yeah, and one thing is, what I would say is, don't reinvent the wheel. People have done this before, and learn from them. There are multiple ways to learn. One is to have a partner like Ahmed and team. They have done this on multiple places. One way is to learn from the community at large. Don't learn from LinkedIn, but learn from a community of people who who are sharing their failures too. A lot of things on LinkedIn is sales. So, but you got to learn. You got to understand what's the real things out there, and then tailor it to what your program is, because what worked for others may not work for you, but there is that common best practices that works across. So and there's a huge database or huge knowledge base on center of excellences. So and yeah, and Ahmed and team is doing an awesome job of setting it up for people if needed as part of the program. So next one we want to talk about is the development cost, which is basically analysis, design, development, testing. So there's quite a lot, right? And as we start the program, there are so many things to consider and so many people, again, people, processes to consider, even tools. Like you bringing in your people, you're training them on the tools, you're onboarding them, you have these development tools that you need to bring in, testing tools, you want to also involve your business people and get them involved, get their time is something you should consider. And then as you go, there is this upskilling of this training and retraining of people as this technology is keeping on changing. As you see, there's newer technologies coming in. The requirements changes, the configurations change, a lot of things change, so you got to keep up, you got to you have to do regression testing and keep it going. And then obviously the hidden cost, main hidden cost is the process complexity. And this is something I've discovered a lot. People, when we go, especially the business analyst, process analyst, go as with the end user, they tell you some process, but they're telling what's in their head, and it's one person's perspective. But then that process, generally when we get back and then we see that, oh, that's much more to the process than we thought. And so then we start, that's where the program starts going off the rails, and that, oh my god, this is more. And so we need to cap it at some place, but we need to know what the exact real processes are. There are tools to do it now, like process mining, task mining tools. There is dependencies and data constraint, a lot of data problems, data quality problems, data extraction problems, a lot of problems we will deal with once you start the program and you discover that, oh my god, the data that I need, it's not so easy to get, or it's not, the quality is not as good as I thought, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So yeah, those are some of the things from a development perspective. What are your thoughts on this, Ahmed?
So Nandan, I think process automation has been generally a paradigm for quick time to market, right? I think especially in the RPA side of the intelligent automation spectrum, right? It's been a very quick time to market type of paradigm, right? And you kind of need to walk the fine line between all the IT, DevOps, compliance requirements that are out there, while you still stay true to quick time to market, delivering quickly, right? So the two ends of the spectrum there have been, no process at all. We're going to do this like Excel macros, or somebody's just going to develop it and we're going to throw it into production, and just, and that's a lot of technical debt to carry, right? That just bloats your technical debt. Nobody knows how things were done. Things fall apart very quickly when you do that. On the other end, we've had folks go, complete traditional IT development methodologies with overheads and all the overheads that you put on a 6-month, 1-year project that doesn't really work when you're delivering in 6-week cycles, right? So those are sort of things that are you gotta walk that, you gotta meld the two and come up with a hybrid fast-paced methodology, right? So for us at Accelirate, what we do is we bring agile-inspired tools and methodologies that satisfy the enterprise requirements for the IT, DevOps, security, whatever requirements that I mentioned, right? So source code control, DevOps pipelines, controlled access to production, deployment guidelines, so on and so forth, that you generally want to have in any software development-ish type of projects, right? So you want to make sure that you have those controls in place, but at the same time, you also want to make sure that that you're delivering quickly. So in from that perspective, at the upfront, we set up those procedures so that we don't have to worry about our methodology to deliver, right? But then when you come to solutioning and design, we also sort of have a approach to do that quickly, right? So we do sort of a war room approach of the subject matter expert, our process analyst, our solution architect, all sitting together to say what is the to be, what is the as is, and what is the to be, and come up with a solution. More focus on the to be, right? Because that's really going to make sure that the business gets what they want out of it. The traditional way to do this has been a process analyst comes up with a to be, sits down with a subject matter expert, they says this looks good, take it to a solution architect who comes up with a technical solution for it, and then there's back and forth in that. Whereas what we do is we sort of take that agile approach and have everyone come together in a fast-paced sort of solutioning sessions and come up with a solution, so that we have that shorten the time frame to come up with the to be state. And not only do we do that, as a part of our service, we can use process mining to figure out the variances in the process, figure out what are the happy paths, figure out what are the exception paths, and what the percentage of those are. And sort of unique to us, we can do that without you having to procure. So the beauty of the managed service provider is that they have their own tools and licenses that they bake into the price of the service, right? So we do that as well. We'll bake it into the price of the service. You don't have to buy additional process mining licenses, for instance, to do this. You like it, you continue with it to have it to give you continuous improvement type of insights into your process. But if you need to do it at one time to actually figure out what's going on with your process, you can do that as a part of that MSP service and actually get started quickly, right? At the end of the day, I think you've heard me say quick quite a few times here, right? Fast paced. That's the idea. The idea is try not to make a big a huge investment and hope and pray that it pans out, right? Think strategically, but work tactically towards that strategic goal.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Think strategic, and I think that's one of the key things, because once we get into the tools, once we get into the bringing the people, there's a lot of dearth of skills in the market. It's so difficult to find good people. There's a lot of technologies out there, just like now you mentioned process mining, and then whole what Gartner calls as hyper automation, or whatever you call it. But basically, there's an explosion of technology. We call it AI, chatbots, process mining. Everything under the sun. As I said, UiPath has multiple products. It's all going to a platform, and then you got to buy each license, manage getting the people. So process mining skills is totally different. So you need to get a people person with the process mining skill. You got to get all that integrated, and then suddenly you could end up with many issues. I mean, especially technical issues. There's a lot of unforeseen process technical issues too. There is process complexity. I mean, as you said, that's one key thing, a key problem with the hidden costs, and where that's one of the biggest hidden costs. But how about the unforeseen technical issues, Ahmed? What do you think about that?
So I think there's a couple of things there. I think you had mentioned also testing. Testing is a big thing, right? So what we have done is we make it a part of the analysis process to figure out what the test cases should be, what the test data should be. The technical difficulties really are, so as you're solutioning, we in fact have our development team up front. In fact, when we go in, a part of our onboarding into a particular organization, say, hey, what are all your systems of record, main systems that you work with in this particular organization? Let's go make sure that we understand how to interface with them, whether that be an API, whether that is whether that's a UI, whether we're going to go make some database calls to get data from there, whatever that interface is to that particular system, we have it figured out up front so that those are not hidden costs anymore, right? So now as you're solutioning, how complex or simple it is to interface with a particular system within that organization. So I think that's really important. And then figuring out your test cases and test data up front, and actually say, while we're developing, let's just make sure that either the SME or the analyst can find the right records and find the right data for these particular scenarios, so that we can test those as well. That's a big, and figuring out a strategy of where are we going to test this, right? Whether this is going to be in the lower environments, whether this is going to be in the pre-prod environment, and things like that. Those are really important things that you need to figure out, and we do that up front, so that those are not hidden or surprises at the end.
Yeah, yeah. And I've heard from multiple people, and this is RPA, okay, and RPA, they took like eight months to get their first bot right, or gets their first bot in production. And I heard from people also they took years to get it right, and a lot of people reinventing the wheel, right, in the sense that they're going through the same failures and things, and then trying to get it right, and they finally get it right, but it takes time. I think now there's an added complexity of multiple technologies. I mean, like just we discussed the hyper automation, lot of technologies to deal with, a lot of people, a lot of skills. So it's really important to learn from the past and not reinvent the wheel. I mean, that
Absolutely.
the time for playing with RPA, going with the FOMO and doing RPA and then trying to get it right, I think is going to be very difficult with this new technologies coming in.
Yeah, and that's where providers like us, who have done this at scale and have done this many times, over and over again, can tell you, hey, listen, this is how you do it, right? This is an ideal way to do it. We have large enterprises who have actually converted, if you may, to our methodology, because they see, hey, listen, we're unnecessarily taking all this overhead for small, like we used to do these small projects back in IT as well. We didn't staff them with with an army of developers and QA testers and analysts, right? You had an analyst and a developer and a subject matter expert that together could take care of the project end to end. So we saw a lot of that stuff, and we're seeing that we're able to take from that experience and move fast, yet at the same time make sure that the right product and the right solution is designed.
Yeah, yeah, and as you said, I think this is important to mention, and this is what people miss is going by technology, but the focus should be on your strategy and be your business outcome, and then find what works best for you. I mean, it could be an MSP like Ahmed's team, or it could be anything else, but the key is to be focused on your business outcome, and ensure that the other complexity is somehow taken care of as much as possible. And yeah, and that's where there's a lot of people out there who have done this, and they're ahead of you if you're just starting out. Even if you have few bots, there are people who have scaled a lot, they know many things. So it's important to learn now. I can't stress this enough, because there is a lot of complexity already here, and it's only going to increase. So getting over that initial hump, getting over that initial few automation that you want to get in, or even the AI use cases that you want to get in, and get rolling. It's better to learn from the past, from people who have done it. Okay, let's move on to the support and maintenance. I think this is the last one, and then we'll open up for a few questions if people have any. Support is, I think I mentioned this at the beginning, this is usually an afterthought. It was for us, I mean, I can tell you, because we were so focused on intent on putting together the governance and the program and the development costs and the licenses and all that, that we said, okay, yeah, we do have a support team, we do have a service desk, they'll take care of it. But what you realize is that the support is the most is the biggest component. It's because somebody has to keep it running, if somebody has to use it usefully. And believe it or not, especially with RPA, you need a lot of support, because the apps change. Like suddenly SAP changed one day, your bot is broken. Okay, we had a problem where we were using it on PeopleSoft, and the program, because it was legacy, couldn't keep up with the bot, and then it used to break often. So just a few examples of how you just need a lot of support for this, which we don't realize as we start. We think, oh yeah, let's go get started, this exciting new tool, let's get started. So it's something to consider upfront, I think so. So if you look at it, you need to set up an incident program, change management program. These are some things we had, but maybe in your case, you need to set up the tools, you need to set up the infrastructure for you to get started, and then bring in the staff, bring in that monitoring and reporting. And all this, if you consider, if you even taking those into consideration, the hidden costs, just think of downtime impact. So basically that, if your bots are down, then it's not useful, and then people will, they don't see that value in it, especially when you're starting out. So lot of changes, lot of process changes can break your bot. So you should be, this support is one of the things you should really consider a lot. Even considering to the, compared to an usual software program, an RPA program, you should consider support a lot because of this whole bot breaking kind of syndrome. All right, so Ahmed, I think this is a sweet spot for you guys, right?
Yes, of course. Look, I think an MSP is ideal in the support, right? So the manage to an SLA, right? At the end of the day, you want to manage to an SLA, whether that SLA is for incident resolution, incident response and resolution, or whether that is even at the level of process execution and say, hey, listen, I need to make sure that this process executes in this particular SLA. I think that's important to make sure that you're managing to the SLA, right? What's interesting is that, in software app dev, right, support teams generally don't tend to get into the code or anything like that, right? They're just, hey, listen, this is not working. Give a call to the developer. The developer will put that, if it's a bug, they'll put that in the next next iteration, next 6 months, it'll get fixed. We know we have a workaround for it, so on and so forth, right? However, these are like, so some of these things, as you mentioned, right? If the underlying website changes, you were working on a customer portal and the customer portal changed, right? You got to update your bot so that they continue to work, or an internal process changed slightly. You have to make sure that you can adapt to it. Ideally, your maintenance team, you don't have the luxury, because you're so fast paced on the development side, you don't have the luxury to say, oh, now this running bot in production is broken. Let me stop my development team from doing whatever they were doing and actually have them make these changes so the existing bots can keep running, right? That context switch, coming from development background, I could tell you that context switch is expensive, right? Because I got to stop doing what I'm doing, go back to something I did 6 months ago, look into it, change it, come back, and then restart whatever I was doing. Now I got to forget, like, I was in the middle of this over there. Now I have to change context and come back to what I was doing, right? So ideally, the maintenance team for RPA programs or intelligent automation programs should also cover enhancements and bug fixes, right? Because they know what those issues are. They know how to fix them, right? Application screen changes, things like that are minor changes, should be handled by the maintenance team as opposed to the new dev team, because that really can make sure that your new development efforts are focused on. So that's a hidden cost in your development side, right? Fixing broken in production automations, and you want to make sure that that's being handled through a service provider or whatever support organization you've set up, so that you can save your team from having to do that. And in fact, a lot, MSPs like us should already come up with the incident and change management tools, and if you don't have them, right? So we internally use our tool sets and our sort of instrumentation on top of whatever your automations are, to enhance reporting, dashboarding, automated triaging, automated ticket resolutions, those type of things a service provider should come with. And if you don't have that, that's something that you should consider. Ideally, the program management function, if you have this in place, the program management function can now focus on the new value to the business, focus on the new things, and say, hey, listen, everything that I throw in production will continue to run and not have to worry about existing automations that are running, right? So you can save a lot of upfront costs by using an MSP to bring in a procedure and the tools and the instrumentation that you need, and then on the continually manage to an SLA so that you don't have, so you're not talking about, hey, listen, I have to go back to my development team to fix this. So that your SLA for a P1 priority one issue is whatever that time is, and then you know what your support windows are, so on and so forth. So a good provider should give you all of that flexibility.
Yeah, yeah. And I think this is one area I've seen many people use service providers because it's, like you said, managed to an SLA, and so it's, you have one throat to choke, and then you're at least starting out, you're saying, okay, I'll do the exciting development part, and then, I have some person taking care of my bots. I can, I can have, have a peace of mind. That's the word I was looking for. It's just, I always keep saying rest in peace. So, you can't rest in peace, but you have a peace of mind. So knowing that somebody is taking care of the bots. The only thing is, once if you are developing it and then you're getting MSP, then you have to transfer the knowledge. I've been through that for bigger applications, so I know that that's a big transfer that has to happen, rather than an MSP taking care of the whole thing. If this is not your business priority, in the sense, this is not your priority, but your core business, yeah, so probably somebody can help you manage the whole thing.
Absolutely. And for us, because we do this at scale, we have a very efficient methodology to actually look. Our staff that does the support is either a automation developer or an architect, right? So they're technical folks that understand these platforms really well. So they're able to come in, take a look at your code, take a look at your automations. So what you need to do the knowledge transfer on is usually, what are the business priorities? What are the issues that the business needs to that you need to communicate to the business on, so on and so forth. So we have a very methodical way of knowledge transfer and transition.
Very good. So yeah, if we have a few minutes, so we can open up for questions and thoughts from anyone.
So if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the question and answer.
Yeah, put it in the chat maybe.
Yep. We're so good. We answered everyone's questions. I see Al is on as well. Hi, Al. How are you? Sorry, you can't talk, but I can, you know.
Okay, yeah. So, Ahmed, this whole, what's your thoughts on, the new intelligent automation, and you're seeing a lot of explosion of technology, as we discussed, right? Like, Chat GPT is going to change the game. I keep saying that, and so how would that impact the automation space? I know, as I said, you need to keep up with this technology, but also it's something for all our teams to continuously improve, and keep up with this new changing.
Absolutely. I think Nandan, you're absolutely right. I'm seeing so I'm a very practical guy, right? When people were talking about blockchain, I kept saying, hey, listen, give me practical applications of this thing. If not, yes, it's great, it's an immutable, a register of transactions, but what are the practical applications of this, and how does this add value to my business? Really, that is really the big thing. So we've been looking at some of, there are all these sort of creative things that people are doing, write copies of ads for me, write this stuff for me, write that stuff for me with ChatGPT, right? I think in my experience, and this is something that we've been looking at, is, we think document processing will change, right? I've seen some GPT based document processing platforms that can now, really easily take a document and give you the data that you might be interested in without even telling the model what you're interested in. It actually pulls out the things that you might be interested in, which is really interesting to me, right? That might, for me, that has been a very interesting thing. I think, even Microsoft went and showed something like that recently. There's a YouTube video out there, but there's some platforms out there that have been doing some interesting stuff with that. And I think what's going to be really interesting, and I think this has been a challenge for enterprises anyways, is looking at what are the security and and data privacy issues that may come up because of this, right? So at the end of the day, even so, for instance, that's always been a question in terms of NLP, right? When you're having chat engines, well, what happens with my data if I send it out there? What happens? How do you mask the privacy of the data that's within my organization? So I think that is a big thing that has been, that I think people will grapple with. But I think the future looks really interesting and cool to me, especially with this new technology. I think you have a lot of new use cases and a change in the model in the way intelligent automation is done. I think we're on the cusp of something interesting there. I think there are a couple of questions.
Yeah, and a couple of questions. Yeah. So
Uh,
someone is asking, is there a framework to manage RPA programs?
Of course there is. There's quite a few of them, right? Again, don't reinvent the wheel. You want a framework to. There you go. The colors seem familiar, so you can try to figure out where that might come from, right?
So yeah, so I think that these are two programs just sharing. So one is the UiPath one. I mean, it's basically led, and the
Automation
second one is
operating
from
model.
Microsoft. Yeah,
Yep.
it's called the Heat framework. So if somebody wants to look up the Heat, HEAT, Heat framework, that's one framework to do it. UiPath has got one. Another one is you can go to portal.blueprism.com and they have got a framework. So yeah, three
Yep.
frameworks. Sorry, go ahead, Ahmed.
There's absolutely, so you're right. Those are a few frameworks that are out there to manage. You're absolutely right. Don't reinvent the wheel. Talk to us. Talk to the software providers themselves have spent quite a bit of effort and energy into making sure that they can provide that to the customer.
Okay, so Desmond is asking, as a MSP, do you go down to process as a service or even bot as a service using RPA or just RP as a service?
Both. We do that. So we have this thing called the B Rock, a business rock, which can do process as a service. You just give us your process. We'll manage end to end and give you the outcome of it. Bot as a service when you need it, as you need it. Infrastructure, not infrastructure included, all different flavors of it. So yes, we do all of them.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. Though I don't know what is the difference between bot as a service or RP as a service, but okay. All right.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. This was amazing, Nandan. Thank you very much for hosting me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and Ahmed, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. I know you've been in this field for long. Your team has been doing an amazing work. So thank you for being here and sharing your thoughts. Great to be part of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Have a good one.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Thanks for joining, everyone.